Oh, thank God Christmas is over. Time for a new year and a whole list of new problems. What are your plans for the new year, Adris?
Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. I have something I've been meaning to tell you.
Okay.
And since the new year is coming, I figured new year, new me, right?
Okay.
And I just feel like we've known each other for a while and it should be okay if
Okay, Adris, what? What is it?
Well, geez, I think it's just time I let the world know. I'm coming out. I am a furry.
Yes.
Well, I was expecting a bigger response, to be honest.
Okay, but you're a 6-foot otter. I figured it was pretty obvious.
Look, you don't have to be so dismissive. This means a lot to me. It's a part of who I am.
Well, that's not really something you need to come out about.
Well, why not?
Adris, coming out, it's for the gays.
No, it's not. There's plenty of things people feel the need to come out about. It's not just about being gay.
Well, being a furry is just a hobby. There's nothing to come out about.
I don't think I'm getting my point across. Let me explain. I, like many people, were introduced to the idea of a furry through, porn. And at a young age, too. My furry awakening was happening at the same time as my gay awakening, which is also, unfortunately, happening at the same time as my sexual awakening. Now, it took me a few decades before I became comfortable enough to be open about my furry hobby, but I wasn't always comfortable with it. It took time for me to accept that it was part of my life, and I spent a lot of time trying to convince myself that my emotions and feelings weren't real. I was fortunate enough to have a pretty supportive family. When I came out to them as bisexual years ago through an email because I was overseas and didn't want to wait any longer, I was met with understanding and acceptance. Even though they were a bit confused, I felt so liberated and free to be more myself. It was great. But that's not what this story is about. I was still hiding a huge portion of who I was and what I wanted to participate in. I grew up in, and even lived in as an adult, a time where being different was very not accepted. And looking at the world today, it almost feels like a bad dream. But gay marriage still wasn't legal. You could get turned down from jobs and from housing for being gay. It was the tail end of a tragic time for LGBT history. The one that affected me directly was Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was still in effect at the time for the military. And for those who don't know, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a policy that you could join the military if you were gay, but any homosexual relationships or sex would mean discharge with no benefits. Sodomy was still a punishable offense, even a jailable offense, for a long time in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, even after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. I remember having to sign a form when I joined that said I swore not to engage in any acts of homosexuality or any homosexual relationships. I felt like I was signing away my soul for a stable job. When I was younger, I was never overtly or conspicuously gay, but I did get relentlessly bullied for it, just for the suspicion. I was beaten and pushed around, and I got off easy still. To this day, people are getting beaten, assaulted, murdered just for their sexuality. Now, I'm saying all of this as a qualifier. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm coming from a place of ignorance. But there was another thing that I was hiding, that I was more afraid to tell my family and friends and coworkers about until I was about 28-ish, and that was that I was a full-fledged furry. The idea that somebody would find out made me nauseous. The repercussions socially were devastating, especially when you're alone and you don't have any furry support group to reach out to. You feel like it would be the end of life to be otherized or ostracized. Even in the gay community, being a furry sometimes can make you feel different. That was, of course, until I felt safe and ready enough, and with enough support from friends and other furs I met online and at cons, to officially come out as a furry. Now wait! Before a bunch of you leave a bunch of hateful comments down below, you can't come out as a furry. It's just a hobby. Or, why are you comparing being gay to being a furry? I want to try to build a case for why it's okay to come out as a furry. Please watch my whole video before jumping to conclusions. Number 1, coming out is just a phrase to express that there's something that you've been hiding about yourself and you're ready to reveal to the world about. I agree that there are varying levels and that coming out as gay has a huge connection to gay history with the pansy parties and how a new gay would be revealed to the world and welcomed in. But this phrase existed well before the larger acceptance of the LGBT community, and they don't get to decide how it's used. The context is that you are coming out of the closet. The closet being some place that your identity sits because you have fear or shame or are forced into. But the idea of the closet even spans beyond gay culture. In the past, it was used for alcoholics during Prohibition who were ashamed of their addiction, amongst many other things. Now, I get that these are not as closely related. For example, it does kind of devalue the importance of a closet when people say things like, "Oh, I'm a closet foodie," or that I'm coming out as having a sweet tooth. But there are a lot of things that we all hide and are ashamed of until we feel comfortable enough to talk about. And realistically, grammatically, coming out about them is the best way to describe it. There are plenty of other phrases that have deep roots in the gay community that we use out of gay context all the time. For example, low-key has deep roots in gay history as meaning closeted. Are we going to start calling people out that they can't be low-key into R&B or learning how to knit on the lowdown? I think, and correct me if I'm the only one thinking this, but being a furry has far deeper meaning to, well, at least to me and my identity.
That wasn't real.
What?
That wasn't real. Who cares?
Don't say that. Please don't say that. It was real. It was real to me.
Then something that I just like to do. Being a furry is not just a hobby. This is where I feel like I'm gonna lose a lot of people in this video. I argue that being a furry is a hobby, sure, but it isn't just a hobby. And saying that is downplaying a lot of real, genuine feelings people have. And I don't mean Therians or trans species, I just mean straight up furries. A hobby, even a taboo hobby, wouldn't hold as much of a social stigma and weight that would cause people to try and hide it as being a furry does. The problem is I think the idea of being a furry... Wow. The problem is I think the idea of being a furry that is only a hobby that doesn't need to be announced comes from a privileged place, especially nowadays. Kids these days! But seriously, there's so much acceptance and open accepting culture that most people, including myself, have an easy go of it when people find out that they're a furry. Some people's parents take them to cons, help pay for their fursuits, or even make them with them. Some people's family and friends join in on the fun, or just accept them and move on. But not everybody has that experience. Not every furry needs to come out, no, but that's because they're privileged enough that it wouldn't affect them if they did. Others... Let me give you an example. Well, your parents may have found out your fursona art in your notebook, and when they asked you, you explained it and it was easy. Imagine a kid living in a rural town, far away from everybody else. He doesn't know any other furries except online. His parents are strict and very religious. The boy is hiding this part of his life from his parents and wants to try to reach out to them to explain, but knows if he does, he'll be shamed back into the closet. So he turns around and goes online for support and asks the fandom, "How do I come out to my family about being a furry?" Only to get met with backlash and attacks, saying things like, "That's silly, you can't come out for that," or "You don't need to come out, it's just a hobby, just do what you want, they don't need to know." That doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes the fandom is the only escape some people have, and that response, that invalidation, that can hurt. I am not saying that these are two equivalent things, but it reminds me of bi erasure. These feelings are real, and there's many people who don't know how to process them. And this is how we are going to approach the topic with invalidation. Shouldn't we be more supportive and welcoming? There's plenty of other things people feel they need to come out about and be more open with the world. Imagine a child in a very religious home who wants to come out as an atheist, or a very Republican home and they want to come out as a Democrat. I hear the comments now arguing that being a furry isn't an identity, and I would agree, but it is tied in there. There's something about it, especially with how vast the community is, that it intertwines with itself and identity. And for those that saying it doesn't, sounds like they're lying to themselves when they repeat it over and over. It's just a hobby, it's just a hobby. Stamp collecting is a hobby. Mountain biking is a hobby. Warhammer is a hobby. These things you can tell anybody about. Have your collection on in your living room, discuss in public, but we hide our fursuits from our family and friends. We don't let people see our camera rolls. We have a different email account for your Fur Affinity accounts.
Hey there, Editing Atris here. One more quick side note I wanted to add is something I thought about last night while I was editing. As a furry, one of the few traits we have that a lot of other communities and hobbies don't is that we change our names to match our personas. I've had full relationships and long-lasting friendships with people that I don't even know their name to this day, their real name, and I don't even go by my real name anymore except for at work.
If it's just a hobby, let's do this mind exercise. You're at work in a professional setting, and a furry friend messaged you on Telegram. You open it up and it's a completely safe for work photograph of you and your friend in full suit at a con hugging. You're surrounded by normies that don't yet know you're a furry, and they look at your phone. Do you open their picture so they can see, or pull your phone away? If you hid the picture, why? It's just a hobby, right? Nothing weird, no reason to hide. Look at the odd ones out. They have a fursuit, their girlfriend is a furry, they have attended cons, yet he still doesn't want to identify as a furry, and that's fine for him. But if it's just a hobby, what's the harm in just saying, oh yeah, I'm a furry? I think that's a big part of it. You don't say, I'm a stamp collector, or I'm a mountain biker, or I'm a potter, unless you have stepped over that boundary from hobby to lifestyle. But for furry, there's no early stage with things like stamp collecting. You collect stamps until you become a stamp collector. With hiking, you go hiking until you do enough to become a hiker. You don't do furry. You don't participate in furry until you do it enough and then you are one. You just are a furry. And this kind of comes from how tied to our identities and sexualities being a furry is. I know not every time, but nearly every time if somebody is a furry, there's other things coming, whatever that may be. And we all know how society views us. Look, I've never been to a golf convention or a windsurfing convention, but I'm assuming that they don't dress up like golf balls and each other. Though they might. I'm not saying that being a furry is a way of life, but it certainly is more than just a hobby. Cause like, what's the hobby? Fursuiting? Walking off to furry porn? Like, I can't draw art, so that's not my hobby. That's some people's hobby in the fandom. I do have a fursuit, but fursuiting is my furry hobby within the fandom. There are plenty of people also who are really light level furries that just like enjoyed Zootopia, or maybe have a few pictures saved on their phone. Being a furry shows a lot about who you are. If it was just a hobby, then go tell your parents, tell your coworkers, see if they treat you the same or different. Here's a test. If being a furry is just a hobby, then stop. Might be able to leave Twitter, get rid of your suit, and then stop attending events, but it's still there. It's a part of you, unfortunately. Like, you will always enjoy the art and characters. Be in the military and tell them that you work on cars as a hobby. Nobody blinks. But tell them you're a furry and see what changes, and how you're treated, and how your advancement opportunities come. It's scary being a furry. Like, there's some who legit want to kill us. There's a guy arrested outside of MFF one year who had a full bag of guns and was threatening to shoot up the con. I've had full sodas thrown at me from moving cars when I was suiting out in public. Also, how many coin collector conventions get gassed or death threats or bomb threats? Okay, I think I've beaten that argument into the ground. I just want to briefly talk about coming out as a furry physically before I wrap up here. I think the true problem here is that when most people hear coming out, they picture some TV soap opera emotional sit down, Mom, Dad, I'm gay moment. And then they all hug and the audience cries. But when I came out of furry to my friends and family, all it was saying, hey, this is something I do in my free time. I know it's a little weird and misunderstood, but it's something that makes me happy, and I don't see how that isn't coming out. I think there are varying levels of coming out. By no means am I comparing coming out as LGBT to like being a furry. That's ridiculous. My issue comes with me being told that I'm not allowed to use that term, otherwise I'm devaluing somebody else's sexuality. And that is a little silly to me. Where I do see it becoming a problem is where people making the coming out videos, or people who actually treat it like it's on the same level of a sexuality, which I don't think is happening that often, but I do remember confiding a long time ago in the Whisper app, not sponsored, that I was tired of being a closeted furry and wanted to come out about it. And holy hell was the response negative. it should be understood that coming out about small things holds less weight than the big things. There's a cop. Now there's two cops. It's not coming out that makes it special, it's what you're coming out about. Not everything is an attack on identity, and it's okay to describe things the way you best feel appropriate. The gatekeeping can scare people into staying in the closet because they're afraid or intimidated by the immediate backlash when just speaking. So, physically coming out. If using the term coming out isn't right, and I'm willing to make a change if it will make everybody more comfortable, what can we use then for harboring a secret that is important to you for years, then after decades letting your family and friends in on that part of your world? Here are some examples that I pulled from my Twitter community.
I am downloading Telegram. I'm walking out of the woods. I'm being released from horny jail. I'm chancing it. I'm letting the dogs out. Let the cat out of the bag. Let the dog off the leash. I'm a carpet monster. Asking for head pats. Just strolling into the headless lounge. Coming out of the fursuit tote. Changing out of my human costume. Hawked up a hairball. Left the stable. Coming out of my cage. Slipped in the knot. Unleashed the beast. Being my fuzzy self. Coming forth with my furry side. Joining the fur side of the force. Ooh woo, I'm a furry. I am reverse voring myself.
Okay, that last one was a little graphic. I think the phrase that I'll try to use in the future to better relay my feelings without offending anybody will be that I opened up about being a furry. That being said, it makes me feel like having to censor what I say about it is forcing me to deny how I felt when I did open up. I may be the only furry that feels this way. And if that's so, then okay, whatever. But being a furry has a really deep and personal connection to my identity in a totally healthy and normal way. Well, normal for a furry anyway. It's not just a hobby to me, it's more than that, it's who I am. And like I said in the beginning, it wasn't easy for me to open up about. I'm glad some people feel comfortable enough in their lives that it's easy for them. Just like some LGBT people are comfortable enough that they don't even really need to come out. But it's just not that way for everybody. But I digress. What do you guys think? Tell me what you think about using the term, or even your suggestions for what we should say instead. And about when you opened up about it in the comments below. I don't want people to get the wrong idea and think I'm attacking the LGBT community. I just think that words have meaning, and they shouldn't be circumscribed to a singular blanket idea. People are diverse and have diverse life experiences. Let's all just relax and try to get along, huh? I wrote and completely recorded this video months ago. After some time thinking on it, I was afraid that the rant style that I had it in originally could be twisted and co-opted by some shitty people for shitty purposes to somehow justify their shitty behavior. So I rewrote it the best I could think to express myself without coming off like an asshole. Anyway, sorry for the serious topic. I promise the next video will be silly. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, a like and share is absolutely appreciated. And if you aren't subscribed already, that button's right there. Go ahead. Don't be shy. Press it. Press it. Thank you all again. I'll see you next time. I'm just gonna go head back into the closet. Bye-bye.
A quick thank you to all my patrons. Your support really helps keep this channel alive. Literally over the past few months, your subscriptions have helped me pay for a better video editing software, a better mic, and to be able to continue to do this. I know I took a long break for the holidays, but I have scripted out a whole lot more, and there's going to be some more exclusive Patreon content. So if you would like to join, feel free to do so in my description below. Thank you to Maxim, Wolfie, Gavin, Dizzy the Bat, Voltage, and Yuma. You're all the best. Love you.